divest, divest from summons and arrest. Invest, invest, invest in our success. Divest, divest from summons and arrest. Invest, invest, invest in our success. Divest, divest from summons and arrest.
What impact do racial bias policies in schools have on individuals, students, and their families?
Well, I remember several years ago, a guy named Ramarley Graham up in the north part of the Bronx was coming out of a bodega, and the police were looking for people using marijuana, that kind of thing. They followed him home. They ended up shooting him and killing him in his own apartment. And I was just so disturbed by that for so many reasons. Senseless loss of a life, illegal entrance into a home, and for many months after that, this community was really up in arms about that particular shooting. And this kind of thing could not happen in kind of a more middle class, upper middle class neighborhood. These, the racial bias, the particular targeting of police, that incident did not happen in school, but it certainly connects to me with, creating this kind of police environment in the schools is not conducive to education. It's not conducive to building community. It's not conducive to all the things that schools should be about. And it just really feels like it's time to end this policy. It's not working.
Yeah, I think these policies are very corrupted because it often feels like security guards and teachers are out to get students and minorities, and it basically, it creates this negative environment for us, and it makes us feel like we're targeted. And it also affects our families because it's like for them to see their child on the news, or for them to hear about that they've been arrested or they've gotten suspended because of a minor action, or they've gotten suspended because of a misunderstanding. It's like,
Definitely. I think that, to like what everyone's saying, like there's so much mistrust, and there's just so much push out, like, from really like overt ways, like, summonses and arrests, but even in just the disengagement, like when you have disengagement of, families where parents, aren't at the table, like aren't able to advocate for their child, aren't valued, in the earlier years, and then young people in like, the middle grades and high schools, or like at every point actually, their voices aren't valued, and like their opinions don't matter in schools, especially when it comes to their own education, and their own curriculum, what they want to learn. They're like learning about things that aren't even interesting or pertinent to their experiences. Then then we see a lot of disengagement, and then add the whole violence factor, the bullying piece, where kids are coming in and families are from the most vulnerable communities, like immigrant, like in transitional housing, like they're very vulnerable to like a lot of these issues, and also are in society, like are being attacked and demonized, and like the scapegoats of a lot of like anti-immigrant rhetoric and anti-blackness and anti-indigenous discrimination. So I think that we see a lot of push out, and then we see like no growth in like leadership, and we see our communities kind of repeat these cycles, and it's it's really problematic. And all the people who are working in schools, of course there are like really great teachers, and I'm not, but at the same time, I think that schools need to be places where they're actually a part of the community, and like at this point, they really aren't, they're not, they're these places where you go, you spend most of your day, and so, but these, structures are in our communities, they're there throughout the weekend, and yet they're really failing the community, so I think that is definitely an issue.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us know teachers. We know, my daughter was a teacher for several years. We know administrators. And we know that, a lot of individual teachers and administrators are just pouring their hearts out, trying to do the best thing they can. And the schools really care a lot about their students and, trying to build an environment. It's an overwhelming environment. I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made just in the structure of education to make it easier So the last question is, what are some alternatives to the current racial bias policies used in schools?
In my opinion, I think some alternatives to these racial bias policies would be restorative justice, as an example. And other things are like more counselors in our schools, more social workers, and more staff that help us like throughout the year. Or like if you're a freshman, they help us throughout our entire 4 years of high school. I say this personally because I've been in circles where restorative justice has been a way of healing and a way of gathering, a way of building community, especially if I've gotten into a predicament or into a fight with another student. Instead of, I get a suspension or they get a suspension, it's better off as we talk it out and we see what caused the issue, what can we do to heal as a union and as students together, because at the end of the day, students have each other, and that's how all schools should be. The counselors can help by supporting students, whether with not only with just their grades, but like if they need any type of if they can provide students with any type of programs out of school. If like there's a student who's like pregnant, a teenager who is pregnant, or a teenager that's homeless and needs like a shelter, or even just food pantries, counselors can provide that. But not only that, like within schools, they can help with like grades, finding different programs for them so that they can build their credit, and get their grades up, and even providing college access for like those who are ready to go to college, social workers, again to also like help mediate the restorative justice circles and transformative justice circles, as well as like helping students build community, and yeah.
So yeah, I actually agree with Bryan. Having more counselors in school is definitely a great idea in my opinion, because it gives students an outlet and a chance to talk about their problems, or if they're failing, as Bryan said, if they're having issues with grades or family, it gives them a chance to actually release their emotions to somebody. And I think another one would be cutting down school suspensions and the number of suspensions for minor problems or misunderstandings in schools. Possibly switching out security guards for trained staff, as where security guards are mainly the cause of these misunderstandings in schools. So, and another one is racially biased training for either security guards or any staff that might help them with these metal detectors in schools.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that I think that both of you and so many of everyone here need to like take back the schools, like, like young people need to lead, and and also we need to like allow parents and community, elders and folks to come back into the school. We need to like definitely like learn to trust in the knowledge, the deep like knowledge that folks in our neighborhoods have of the community, of the neighborhood, of history, so that we can all be in an actual learning process and like you're saying, like heal, like that's like our work, and like young people have each other's backs, and like parents, and they're also, as one Masa parent said, parents are the voice of the community, and so when you're shutting out parents, then you're shutting out like what people want, what community wants. And that's been something that's really held back our schools, and also held back the children and their like leadership opportunities. And so I definitely do think that we need to empower parents and like invest in families finally, and definitely let young people lead, because they'll have great ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the emphasis on positive engagement, counselors and more support for programs like restorative justice that allows people to develop the tools to work out situations on the ground is awesome. I'd be really interested in any experiences any of you have had that have been really positive. Like, have you had a particular counselor or a particular experience in restorative justice that's really made a difference for you?
So I've had there was this time where I got into a bit of a feud with someone who I was very close friends with, and I felt bad because the way how things ended were, I don't like you, you don't like me, let's keep it at that, when we were like the closest of best friends. And I guess in a way, people in my organization have tried to like help me make a restorative, at least build a restorative circle and have us heal, talk about why we stopped being friends. And I kind of like didn't feel like that was the way at first. But afterwards, I brought it up as a subject towards my counselor last year. And after we had a restorative circle, me and her are now best friends again, and I'm kind of really like happy we were able to heal, and not only heal, but drop whatever. I guess the issue was and coming to an agreement that our friendship came before any other issue.
That's cool.
So I don't have a personal experience with restorative justice, but something that that did happen is like my younger sister, she was like suspended a lot, and she went from school to school, from like alternative learning site to another alternative learning site, until she was just like, enough, like I'm not gonna do this anymore. And she left. She didn't want to, continue. And so like, yeah. So I think about, like, I think back and, there was lots happening at home, and we were all young, and there was so much that could have happened if there were like enough staff, if there was restorative justice, instead of, just suspensions and like, this. So yeah. So I think that it's just clear to me. It's so obvious that we need RJ as well. Yeah.
This has been a great discussion. Thank you, Jordani, Helen, and Doug, for collaborating with us, having this discussion. And thank you, the viewers who are watching this video right now. Please give us a like, subscribe, and our social media will be in the description below. If you have any questions, or even if you just want to join us and take a peek on what we do, contact us. It'll be in the description.
Thank you, Bryan.
Oh.